So as a longtime atheist, I didn't have high hopes for Christspiracy. I used to be one of those kids who went to church every Sunday, and I was even kind of annoying about it, but at age 12 I lost my faith and never looked back. So when I saw the plot of Christspiracy, what Jesus thought about animals, it just didn't seem that interesting to me. But writer-director Kip Anderson, who also produced some of those other famous spiracies, really hooks you in the first third of this movie. Though I do think there's a bit of a bait and switch in there, but we'll talk about that in a second. He starts by traveling around with fellow vegan and longtime Christian Cameron Waters.
Welcome to Spiracy Studios.
Who he apparently met when Cameron asks him if there's a spiritual way to kill an animal.
Is there a spiritual way to kill an animal? I'll put it this way. How would Jesus kill an animal?
The two then travel around asking various spiritual leaders this same question, and all of Kip's trademark interview hijinks ensue. People stumbling over themselves, people seeming ignorant, people saying we need to stop this interview.
How would Jesus kill an animal?
That I have no idea.
Him saying, I can kill this animal, or let's do that again. That's not good.
I think we need to wrap things up.
If you've seen the other films, you know what I'm talking about. But the narrative core and the real hook of the film revolves around this biblical event known as the cleansing of the temple. Basically, Jesus goes to this temple in Jerusalem and yeets all the merchants and money changers, saying they've turned this house of prayer into a den of thieves. Or so we're traditionally taught. We're then taken on a journey where Kip and Cameron visit various biblical scholars who have a different interpretation of the event and even a different interpretation of the word thieves. And here's where I think the film's execution is really clever. This mystery could have been unraveled pretty quickly, in like 10 minutes of voiceover and interviews. But they thread it throughout the movie, teasing you along the way until it crescendos into a really satisfying conclusion. So then what's in the rest of the movie? Well, this is why the thumbnail of this video cheekily says bait and switch. If you're a vegan and you've ever tried to get a non-vegan to watch something like Dominion or Land of Hope and Glory, you know how hard it can be to convince someone to strap in for 2 hours of straight slaughterhouse footage. But what if the movie had a really compelling and well-produced narrative? What if they hooked you in with a mystery that you desperately wanted answers to? And only then, after they've hooked you, but before they reveal the mystery's resolution, do they show you the true brutality of animal farming. Enter Christspiracy. And this, I think, is the real strength of the documentary. Kip's previous films focused on health and the environment, with some animal ethics sprinkled in. But in Christspiracy, the animal ethics really take center stage, particularly when we hit about the middle of the movie. And I suspect this is the code Kip was trying to crack in those two previous projects. He wanted to talk about the animal ethics, but he was attempting to wrap it in a more palatable package for a general audience. And at least for my money, it made the animal ethics message come across as kind of weak in those films. But it did not come across as weak here. There were some absolutely harrowing moments in this film, but I think they managed to walk that really fine line between honestly showing the brutal reality of farming while not causing people to shut down and walk out. They also get ahead of a lot of the common arguments by visiting not just a humane slaughterhouse, but even the farm of regenerative poster child Joel Salatin. And spoiler alert, it doesn't look like anything humane is going on there. They even follow along on a deer hunt, capturing the psychological journey and turmoil of an adolescent getting their first kill, which I thought had some particularly powerful and poignant moments. It ended up being like a really telling microcosm of how society attempts to snuff out the inherent sense of empathy that we have as children. The other thing the movie does is show how veganism and animal liberation is consistent with a broad range of religious faiths. So while the first bit of the movie demonstrates the contradictions of non-vegan religious leaders, the latter half highlights various religious leaders who are in fact vegan. Now here I think it would have been nice to dive a little farther into their philosophies, but it still got the point across. Now as far as critiques, the movie definitely seemed a bit one-sided in their resolution of the central mystery regarding the cleansing of the temple. Doing a couple quick searches online, there seems to be a bunch of different interpretations of this event, and they really didn't highlight any truly substantive pushback on their interpretation. And I'm guessing this is where a bunch of criticism of the movie is gonna come from. But ultimately, I just don't think it matters that much. Atheists and agnostics will find it interesting, but ultimately aren't gonna care if Jesus was or wasn't vegan. It's more like a fun mystery to unravel in the movie. And obviously followers of other faiths aren't gonna care that much either. So what about Christians? Well, this is where there will obviously be pushback, but honestly, even if a Christian finds their interpretation totally implausible, if they watch the whole movie, I think it's a win. Because it's unlikely they'd have been exposed to the harsh reality of farming in the same way through some other medium. And at the very least, it offers an alternative perspective of Jesus' vegan status. The other big miss is not having Earthling Ed, literally the second coming of vegan Jesus, doing historical reenactments in this movie. I don't know, maybe they thought it was too on the nose. But the most striking thing about the movie was just how watchable it was. It was like extremely compelling from start to finish. I was feeling all kinds kinds of feels during this movie. Sadness, hope, frustration, an unusual amount of anger directed at the rationalizations of Buddhist monks.
What's this thing about animals, guys? What's this thing about eating animals all the time? You want to know about more Buddhist stuff, don't you?
So if you're vegan, watch this movie, rate it on IMDb, share it on social media, and suggest it to your non-vegan friends. As someone who generally doesn't like vegan documentaries that much, I really enjoyed this one. And if you want to help me make this my full-time career, check out the Patreon in the description. And shout out to Ryan O'Neill, Tom Eisenbeiss, Nutbase News, Monstar, David Yastrzemski, and Maxwell Edison.